A Build Hatch developed production.
Hello, I'm Aaron Kyle and welcome to another episode of Build Hatch. On this week's episode of Build Hatch, we feature our first construction product on our show called DeckTec. DeckTec is an Australian-made decking product designed to save serious time and money. More importantly, on today's show, you'll hear how Steve and Pete, who are the founders of DeckTec, began with a simple problem-solving idea and took these guys all over the world trying to find the right people to manufacture their product. This was a very entertaining sit down and definitely told the real story behind the hard work that goes into building construction people and their lives that you wouldn't normally hear about. What a story. Now let's get into it. Steve and Pete, welcome to Build Hatch.
Thanks for having us, mate.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So this is really exciting for us on Build Hatch because this week you guys are actually our first product, which is being featured on our show. So this is really exciting for me. So your product is called DeckTec.
That's right.
So what's the best way to describe DeckTec in simple terms?
Yeah, well, DeckTec's it's a deck spacing assembly and a joist protector in one. So it's a winged profile product that sits on the joist that sets your decking boards out and also protects the understructure or the substructure.
And then having a look on the website, from what I can tell, once you lay the decking boards, you can then take away the spaces.
Every second spacer.
Yeah. How about we take it all the way back to the beginning? So where did the concept of DeckTec come from?
I guess that I was building decks at the time and just got sick of every few boards, making sure it's straight, getting down on your knees with the packers, getting the gaps right, screwing them off, doing that on every joist. And then the last one was up at a height, so dropping your packers and then up and down. I'm thinking there's just got to be a better way, hey?
So how long were you doing decks for?
I've been in the trade about 30 years. Majority of that was shop fitting. With that, a lot of different areas and problem solving, I guess. And then, in between that, there'd be the odd carpentry job like decks. So probably done quite a few. But just thinking there's got to be a better way. And I was getting older too.
And it's labour intensive, isn't it?
Oh,
like building decks, you're on your knees, like you said.
That's right.
It's constantly, all day, bent over.
Sunburn, the whole lot, yeah.
I was thinking on my way over here, particularly with decks, and in hindsight, I reflected on what a lot of people perceive about decks. And it's so common that you speak to someone or people will say, oh, I found a chippy or a carpenter on Gumtree, or I got someone to come over and quote a deck, or they built my deck. And you're talking about like tens of thousands of dollars on some of these decks. And they're not large areas, are they?
No, they're not.
And it's because they're so labour intensive.
Big time, that's right. Yeah. I mean, if you're using the 90 mil boards, they used to use 70 and 2 screws in every 450 mil, making sure everyone's straight along the way. It does take a lot of time. Yeah,
so it's not unusual to spend like 10, 20, 25 grand on building a deck in your backyard, is it?
No, not at all. You knock that up pretty easy.
Pete, how long ago was that roughly when you were sort of playing around with this idea and thinking there's got to be an easy way to do this?
That would have been about 6 years ago. And then it probably took me a year and a half to get it close to what it is today. There was just one problem. Couldn't get my head around. Every time I thought I had it, I just thought about how that's going to affect timber expansion.
So what were you thinking in the early days? Were you thinking of, because correct me if I'm wrong, but my take on building decks is a lot of the effort and the time and the labour is in the set out work.
That's right.
And so once you've set your deck up and you've laid everything out, you've put all your joists and bearers all ready to go, you've marked everything out, run a few string lines.
Yep.
It's go from there, but it's getting to that point, isn't it?
Yeah, that's probably the interesting bit. And then you get to laying your decking boards, and that's where you just spend hours and hours on your knees doing the same repetitive thing.
All right, so I'm looking at this DeckTec product, and to me it's a plastic weather protective angle or trim that goes over a decking joist.
That's spot on.
Yeah, that's spot on.
Yep.
So, and it's got these little wings or tabs, what do you call them?
Removable spacer.
Removable spacers. So this goes over the joist and basically protects it, and then these removable spaces allow whoever's building the deck to basically just take them away and...
Well, so the fixed spacer holds the tension in the board and keeps your lines true. And then your removable spacer comes out to give those boards the movement variation in the board.
So the decking boards can expand and
Which they do.
Contract during weather or after rain. So, all right, brilliant product. So what did you do? So 6 years ago, you were sort of toying with the idea. A year and a half, what were you making, like hand-drawn sketches or doing research? How did you go about it?
Yeah, sketches on the computer. And it was always going to be a profile with notches to space out. The first one, I think, was aluminium. And then that just wasn't practical. And then it came across my mind to use that winged edge to serve two purposes. But the spacings were always a problem because I needed to get an equal space that would hold a board straight when they're bowed, but also when the job was finished, allow those boards to move in the wetter months and not bind and cup. And that was the tricky bit. I had all sorts of toys going on playing with that. And then I was having a beer one day and it just was at a pub and it struck me. I flew home and drew it. I thought, that's it.
Bingo.
Bought a 3D printer and made up a model. That's when I showed Stevie.
So, Steve, what's your background? So, Pete, you're a chippy by trade.
That's right.
And Steve, what sort of business are you in?
Shipping containers, mate.
Righto, so sales and distribution.
That's right.
I'm starting to see where this relationship's coming together.
So we have a cafe as well.
Okay.
And Steve was a regular customer every morning, and we just got talking over a coffee out the front of the cafe. Become pretty good mates. And then when I had this with Steve's business background, well, got to show that guy.
You sort of baited me for about 6 months. You said, I've got something here I'm going to show
That's
you.
right.
And I've got it ready.
That's right.
So you started like just showing Steve and you went out and bought this printer, so you're able to, develop a few concepts?
Yeah. Well, by the time I had it at that stage, I believed I had all the flaws fixed and it was going to work. So then whether we could get it manufactured on a commercial scale was the next thing. But yeah, that was the time to show it to Steve and get the ball rolling.
So I'm really intrigued, like just to go from were you playing around in the backyard or in your shed or on work sites? Like, how did you experiment with it?
I had access to a workshop.
Okay.
So yeah, I was able to knock up little jigs there and little models, try it out. But the mathematics behind it, I guess, just that it was going to work. It was still nervous.
I bet it was.
Yeah, the money invested on the tooling and not knowing until you had that final product, you know.
And so did you have to like consult with anyone on this, like go talk to engineers or manufacturers, or in the early days was it just trying to work out by asking different people how, you know, what are the best resources for this?
We engaged with one guy. He was actually from Melbourne. He was a product development guy, and he just led us down the garden path. Didn't he, Stevie? Yeah. Broke our hearts, really.
Just the research and development or costs?
Yeah, he was just a bit gimmicky, mate. And when you're in that innovation space, you don't have a path to follow. You know, it's new ground, so you sort of reach out and look for anyone that might be able to help you. And we got sort of speared into a bloke, and he was just a bit of a... Probably wasn't the guy for us, mate. At that point, we sort of given up for a long period, hadn't we, Petey?
Yeah.
You know, it was probably about
disheartened.
maybe 6 months, man, after we finished with him. We didn't do too much, and I was on the way to Fiji. I was probably 8 gins deep, mate, and I was listening to podcasts, and there was the one about being category kings. And I don't know, little light bulb went off, mate. I got to Fiji and said, Petey, we're doing this.
When you had the concept, what did you do after that? Like, did you go overseas or...
Yeah, we actually, Pete met me at the Maryville TAV. Was it 13th of February, 2017? I know the date because we incorporated the company on Valentine's Day the next day. So we always remember the date we incorporated. And from there, mate, we sort of worked in dog years. We thought, you know, we had something pretty special and we wanted to get it to market as quick as we could, and we're always super protective of the innovation. And we worked with an IP company in Brisbane and went about getting our Australian patents in place before we did our international patents, and then trademarking the brand that we'd come up with. And then once we had sort of our...
So how did that work? Did they sort of say, look, this is what it's going to cost you to be able to do this process?
Yeah, and it is pricey. They go through the novel parts of your product, and then they go and do They do a patent search to see if there's anything in that space, in the category we're going for, and if there isn't, they tell you that there's an opportunity to patent or protect your idea in that space.
Because there's a fair bit of research in these guys. They're basically patent attorneys, as they're commonly referred to, and there's a fair bit of research that goes on with. They need to make sure that, you know, if there's inventive steps involved and other type of parts of your product to protect your IP once it becomes distributed.
That's right. I think the features that got us over that line was the winged edges, Stevie, and the removable spacer, the features of that.
So what was that process like? Like, were you guys both flying up to Brisbane, meeting the lawyers?
Yeah.
We took our... So Pete knocked up the prototype on the 3D printer and we took it in a suitcase up to Brisbane, mate, and went and met with the guys up there, and that was it.
It's very gutsy, and I love the energy that goes through to be able to do this and self-fund, totally inspiring story. I'm interested to know then, so what was the process like? How long did that take by the time, I guess, you engage your patent attorney or your IP team? How long did it take for them to kind of come back and say, look, this is great, you guys are good to go?
Yeah, not too long, because they go to market, and once you engage them, they go to market and start doing, like you said, as the research to see if you have got a novel idea. So, and once you come back and said, I think you're good to go with this and that. Some of if you read through the patent, man, they write, you've probably seen them but they write line after line of if this, then that. If it isn't this, then it is that. It's
all about inventive steps.
Yeah.
And breaking everything down into written language. That's All right. So that was a pretty reasonably quick process. What was next after that?
How do you make it? And how, and once we make it, how are we going to get it to market? So
packaging. Yeah,
and that's when we did engage that one guy down in South Australia, and sort of hit just all the doors closed, mate. We sort of packed up, We both lost a little bit of energy. We knew we still had the patent there. We could revisit it, but it sort of went to sleep for a little while, and then we ended up, it was funny. I sell shipping containers, and there's a guy from PPC, the moulding company in Sydney, rang me up and said, I've got a 40-foot container here I want to sell. And I said, and we agreed on a price, and he bounced me through the invoice, and it said from PPC plastic injection moulding. And I rang him, and I said, mate, what do you do? And he said, we're a plastic injection moulding company in Sydney. And I went, what sort of plastic injection moulding? He explained, and I said, I've got this idea. I want to come down and see you. We went down and seen those guys, mate, and they pretty much turned, what we thought we might be able to do on its head, mate. We met with their design team and the guy that designs the tooling side of it, and also their guy that runs their business, mate, and went from there. So, and then we got priced up on the tool, and we ordered the tool, and got some prototypes over, and it was the first time we sort of held the product in our hand. You go through a lot of different steps, like how long do you want to make the strip, you know what I mean? And you go through the really intricate details on all facets of the product, which is probably more Pete's space than mine, but that process was, from when we engaged them to when we sort of had a product, would have been about 9 months.
So one of the things I wanted to ask you is also, and a lot of people will have this in mind, how does this compare with costs or practicality? Like, as mentioned earlier, building a deck's very labour intensive. So how does this work out in terms of costs?
So it's just shy of $16 a square metre, which is easily made up with your labour savings.
Correct.
And the customer gets a projection of the joist. Like, it's going to last, well, it's not going to rot. It's not going to get wet.
That's right. And particularly if you're building a large deck, you usually have to be very careful in how you set things out once you run your string lines, and you have to be very careful to know where your start point is and how that affects your finish point as well. So does that allow that challenge to be overcome?
Yeah, well, DeckTec's fixed space is tested at 1200 kPa, so it can take a really, really bent board and hold it in place, and it progressively straightens every second board because it goes fixed, removable, so you don't need to do that anymore, so.
And what about multiple chippies working on the job as well?
So up until now, traditionally you'd start at one side of your deck and lay your boards out, so you got to the other end. Fairly calculated on where you're going to finish. Well, now you know exactly where you're going to start, exactly where you're going to finish. And, mate, you can put as many tradies on there as you've got access to manpower now. You can start in the middle, you can start either end. wherever you like.
And the critical step in that equation is the spacing. If you're working on a deck, and because of this DeckTec product and the spaces that you have, you can't make that error of
You just can't.
minimising your gaps or them gradually growing out.
That's right. Eliminates errors, mate. You
That's
can have
right.
you can actually have unskilled labour. So a lot of builders, if they're working on, land boards traditionally, the tradie generally wouldn't leave the job site, because if the unskilled labour or the apprentice gets it wrong, mate, it's quite an expensive process to pull all the boards back up and pull all the screws out. So with our product, the chippy can lay out, or the builder can set out his deck, and he can leave unskilled or the apprentice mate to lay all the boards, and he won't get it wrong.
That's right. The critical cost saving in your product is actually being able to speed up the time by outlaying that $16 a square metre.
That's right.
You're able to save that many times over in less labour costs.
And mate, time is money, and particularly in the cities where, sometimes it's an hour and a half to drive to a job site, and if you've got 2-3 jobs on the go at once, mate, time is money. And our product, it does protect the joist long term for the client, but the benefit for the chippy is the time saving, and knowing that he won't get it wrong. I'm not saying chippies get it wrong, but you can't get it wrong.
Yeah, it reduces that critical error.
And in commercial spaces too, where closing an area down costs money, say a beer garden or something, and you've got trees and seats and everything involved, still one string line set out. Doesn't matter how big the deck is. If the builder wants to throw 100 chippies on there, in a day they can knock out that 100 metres.
Also, if there's some decks they build out around trees and spars, mate. Once you lay your first run out, mate, you build out around objects with dead accuracy. You know what I mean?
That's
so
right.
You always know your deck's going to be square, both sides, front and back, of any objects, whether it's a spar or a tree or whatever it is. So.
All right. So when I was building and I guess setting out decks or any sort of floor structure for that matter, one of the common problems I used to always hate, it was a pet hate of mine, was packers. So looking at this product, do you still need to have packers?
No, not at all. In an extreme case where you got a bent board, I mean, use your skills. You might just have to touch it up as you're putting a screw in here and there, but packers are gone. They're fixed. The removable ones pull out at the end of the job, so you're not dropping them off your first story.
No more dropping your packers, as.
Well, and it's not necessarily Chippy's fault. It's just one of those things when you build a deck, the packers fall down underneath, and it's quite often a very difficult to access space to crawl in underneath and get it.
Time.
So they just sit there.
That's right.
Yeah.
Or go and cut another packer and
And it's
down
less,
on your knees.
and it is less time on your knees. You spend less time on your knees with DeckTec,
Sure.
so which is better for your back too.
Definitely.
Less time bent over.
Now, back to the 3D printer idea. So did you consider back then whether you could mass produce this with investing in like a pretty sophisticated 3D printer, or that was never really
That was never an option.
Yeah.
Although I didn't understand all about it, I knew it was going to be an injection moulding. Had to be for the efficiency of it. But we've learned a lot about that process along the way too.
Oh, for sure. And just the effort and the time that goes into these things. And I keep saying every week, but we have this concept with Build Hatch that a picture tells 1,000 words, but it doesn't tell the full story. And looking at this product, and I know that the time, the stress, the energy, the tears, the probably arguments, the laughs, the beers, like a whole heap of emotion that goes into coming up with an idea from concept all the way through to completion and creation.
All of that.
It's a massive journey, isn't it?
Yeah.
Huge journey. Yeah.
Were there any times along the way where you thought, nah, this is too much or
Too many.
too many?
Yeah. You got to remember why you started.
So what do? You just keep reminding each other, thinking, well, yeah, I'm actually interested to know, was it a case, did you ever go through a period of time where you thought, well, we've gone this far, we may as well keep going?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know, we've got a pretty unique relationship too, and it's good. We sense when someone's down and do what we need to pick them up. There's been a lot of that go on.
It's handy having a team. Be tough to do on your own, I reckon. Like
Sure.
one out, one bloke.
Yeah, just someone to throw some ideas.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Yeah.
Mate, a lot of late night conversations, mate, early mornings, million emails. When something hasn't been done before and it's brand new ground, there's no roadmap to do it, you know, like for a brand new product. And we'd never, like, how do you even package it? Where is a packaging company? What sort of packaging? How many units are you going to put in every package? What are you going to put inside the package, you know? Once you've done that, what sort of distribution model are you going to use? Like, I'd never heard of third-party logistics, 3PL, before I started this product, you know. They're like warehouses that warehouse your product and punch your orders out to all your customers. We didn't know any of the stuff. I didn't know about injection moulding. We didn't know about 3PL. We didn't know about IP, mate. We didn't know about anything. We just knew that we had something pretty special, which I think the most important thing for your listeners is you've got to have a great product. That's the basis of anything, you know, because you can't go through the heartache, mate, if you're selling snake oil. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's got to be useful, practical, and affordable.
Definitely.
As well. Right. I was looking on your website, and it says that it's recyclable as well, or sustainable. So
yeah, it is.
It's 100% recycled polypropylene.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's been another battle too. All the keyboard warriors, and you know, we get great, more plastic. Well, we've taken plastic out of the landfill and put it somewhere secure
where it can be reused.
That's right.
Which is recyclable to its core.
Yeah. Well, it has been reused. Yeah.
That's right. Was this the final concept? Like, how many trials or how many concepts did you actually go through before you got to this particular model or finished product?
A dozen, I would say. No, by the time it got to the 3D printer, that was it.
You knew it was going to be fixed and removable spaces with offset semicircles to allow, when you got two, maybe 91 mil boards, as we didn't want to have like a wedge, so it had to turn in on itself for the user to be able to get the removable space out once his face fixed the boards.
And it had to accommodate, not all boards are 90 mil. Say you're doing a 90 mil deck, not all boards are 90. Some will come at 91, so the trick to get that spacer to house, say you had two boards at 91 mil, if they were rigid, both rigid, you're never going to get two boards in there.
All right, Pete, so what if, you just mentioned 90 mil boards, what if I want to use a narrower width or a wider board?
So we've pretty much made to what the market asked for. Doesn't seem to be a lot of demand for the smaller boards anymore. We've got a 86 mil, we've got a 90, and a 140 on the market now, and a 135 on the way.
So it covers all bases, really.
Pretty
like
much.
you said, no one really does.
The main four sizes.
That's right.
Yeah, we get asked a little bit for a 130, but probably not enough yet to go and invest in the tooling.
So just to recap, you'd found the right manufacturer. How long did that take for them to, I guess, mass produce?
First, you have to go through the design process with plastic injection moulding. So to get your tooling design, and then you get a price on the actual tooling. The tooling's actually made in China, and then the tool comes out to Australia where we manufacture our products. So that process, again, would have been probably 6 to 9 months again, Pete.
Isn't it great in hindsight, particularly with what we've seen recently with COVID and everything else, that you went over to China, couldn't find what you were looking for, and you're able to manufacture it locally in Australia made?
It was a godsend in hindsight, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
The support and the communication alone is worth every cent.
It's nice having the factory now down the road.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
So what were your aspirations, or what were your goals back then to just, did you have like a limited budget where you said, we'll produce 500 of these things to start off with, or what were you thinking back then?
Mate, we thought we were going to, reality versus your expectations is very, very different in the innovation space. You know, you're shooting for the stars, mate, and you get a lot of kicks in the mouth, a lot of doors shut in your face. Mate, we thought like hardware store owners would be taking us out on their yachts, mate, and taking us for dinners, and we'd solved the great problem that had never,
gold.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the reality was, mate, it was pretty tricky to even get a meeting with the hardware store owner.
So how do you do that? Like, if you're thinking of a concept, how do you just pick up the phone and ring?
Yeah, dog and a bone, mate. Just don't stop.
It's just hustling, isn't it?
That-
It's just
that is.
pounding the
Yeah.
pavement,
And thick skin.
Yeah, and
people hanging up, not returning your calls.
And we had no resources, so it started out as a side hustle. Like I sell shipping containers, pizza chippies, got a cafe, so it was a side hustle for both of us. It's quickly took over, and once you get it to a point, you pass the point of no return, as you said before, we had to both assume a sales rep role, which I'm not a sales rep, neither is Pete. You know what I mean? So, mate, and what you said is right, as just looking for opportunity, mate, and just any door that opened, mate, we just ran through it, mate, and tried to get exponential value from any meeting or any time that anyone would give us, and a lot of guys could see we're just a couple of good tries, good Aussie boys trying to have a go, and we had a great product and we'd come so far. So, with anything, you need a little bit of luck and you need a little bit of help, and we probably got a bit of both.
You had the luck with the supplier that you'd seen on an invoice.
Yeah, just lucky.
That was just fate.
Yeah.
So
sure.
Can you remember the first yes that you got?
I do.
Yeah.
What was that like?
We still got the purchase order, the handwritten purchase order. We couldn't believe it.
And that was the early days. And we just thought, we're going to be shipping out pallets of this stuff every week.
We thought every store would only ever order pallets.
And how are we going to keep up with manufacture?
We were trying to solve, we were pre-thinking how you're going to solve the problem of keeping up with manufacture. We never really.
You thought it was the opposite. You thought, how are we going to keep up with this? It's going to fly out the door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we come up with pallet displays and everything because we thought they'll just interchange the pallets that they order.
Like you said, when you're thinking of these things and you're aspiring to do something successful or something that you love with a lot of passion, you shoot for the stars.
Yeah.
We drove my old diesel Vito to Brisbane overnight. 6 o'clock in the morning, the two of us were installing displays.
Got there at about 3:30 in the morning, pulled up at Caboolture in this dumpy little motel, man, got up at 6 a.m. And the Brett's Hardware chain was the first chain of stores. Well, they're a smaller chain, but they got 6 stores in Brisbane. They're quite strong in that space. And they give us a crack real early doors. We flew back from New Zealand via Brisbane because we organised it. We got a meeting. So we'd sent them enough information and we got a meeting and they give us a crack. And we drove up there in Petey's Vito, mate, and had 2 hours sleep and drove all the 6 stores. At the time, as we had these expensive in-store displays we'd knocked up with little LED screens playing videos that we'd had. Like, we really went for it early days. So we went up to set up all the displays. So, yeah.
It's inspiring. I absolutely love it. So, and you would have been, lack of sleep, but you would have been high on energy.
Oh, we're
and
pumped.
Yeah.
Yeah, were we?
Yeah.
Coldest night Brisbane had
25
seen
years.
Yeah.
And Pete's Vito.
Leaked a lot of air.
Pete's Vito, because it wasn't that cold in Newey when we left. Like, it was September, was it, Petey?
Yeah.
September. And Pete's Vito's passenger side window doesn't shut all the way to the top. And it was the coldest night in Queensland in 25 years.
Froze.
Yeah.
These are the great little memories that make up all the the downtimes and those struggles. So
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we've had a lot of laughs along the way.
I bet. So that hardware chain, they said yes, started to distribute your product. And do you have to sort of negotiate your own terms where it's 90-day credit terms?
They're all quite rigid. A lot of the independents, mate, are a lot more flexible than probably some of the bigger boys, But they're pretty rigid. Like, it's 30, 60 or 90 days end of month. But we understood that. So we'd punched a little run of products, mate, that we wanted to get out there. And
you knew that eventually with a bit of traction, once the product had been introduced into the market, it would just gather a bit of traction.
Well, mate, we just bulldozed, man. The traction didn't really come. I think a lot of people seen it as a real novelty. I thought a lot of people, and a lot of hardware stores, when we went and met with their reps and so on, said this is more a DIY product. But Pete being a chippy, and we understood, you touched before that decking's quite a simplistic task, but it's like pancakes. It is easy, but you can really only do one at a time. You know what I mean? So we thought it was more for chippies to get more jobs done for clients. So we dropped those 6 stores in Brizzy, and then we dropped our digital marketing campaign over top just in that geographical region, which is, and someone tagged a bloke in Melbourne who had a hardware store from Brisbane, and then he rang us, and again, as he bought a full pallet. So we still thought,
this is it.
This is how they do it. This is awesome.
This is it.
So wrong.
Yeah. So, and from there, we got another break. My accounts girl is actually in Hobart, and she's mates with a builder in Hobart who knows a bloke named Will Clennett, who runs Clennett Mod 10 down there, and she got us a meeting with him in Hobart. So then we flew down to Hobart, mate, overnight, met with Will, and Will give us a crack. And then from there, he give us some more names on the mainland. And like, if you're a hard trier and they see you're a hard trier, I feel like people are real willing to give you a crack, especially in Australia.
Absolutely.
And that was the case here too. It was like me and Pete driving around, mate, or flying around and doing whatever we could to get this innovation in people's face and in people's hands. But the first 12 months, sales were stiff. Like, man, it was hard to even get a hardware store to take some product to get their clients to trial it. You know what I mean? Because I think a lot of builders, when you're in a new space, they're looking at a product thinking, if I lay that down on my deck and that doesn't work out, I'm going to have to pull all those boards up, and that's going to be an expensive process for me. So it was tricky. Early days, mate, it was tricky to even get a builder to trial the product, you know?
Because it's a foreign thing, isn't it? It's change, and it's very difficult to...
Yeah, and another hurdle was there's been a lot of products previous to ours that are supposed to speed up the process of laying a deck and make it simpler, and they've all had their faults and failures. And coming into that space now, there was a lot of that. Here's another...
Heaps, you know, another failed decking system, you know, but we knew it wasn't, and we just kept punching through.
Was there ever a breakthrough moment when you thought, this is it?
I still don't know if we've had the tipping point as, you know, like, you don't know. I mean, you just keep going. Like,
quietly cautious.
There's been a lot of highs, mate, and a lot of lows, you know. It was awesome, man, when we relaunched the brand. So the first 12 months, we went out to market with a really simplistic design. It was just our logo on a yellow carton. It was probably a little bit arrogant, mate. Not as arrogant as Apple with just the apple on a white box, but, you know, it didn't really tell anyone a lot about the product, the box. We didn't get it right round one. And we went to market with cartons of 24 and 12. And we only had a 90mm product because we didn't have any other sizes. So a lot of people I like your product, but I don't lay a lot of 90 because that's only Merbau and pine predominantly, you know. So they said, when are you going to do an 86 and a 135 and a 140? So that's when we thought, okay, so we've got a great innovation that's starting to get a little bit of use in the market. So it's proof of concept. Like, it was almost, we didn't see it like that, Pete and I, but it was almost like 12 months. The first 12 months was really like R&D, but we thought we're on the market going okay, but it was really still like R&D until we had a full rebrand, mate, and dropped our 86 and our 140mm products last August, and then we started to go pretty well, mate. We put a couple of reps on, mate, and knocked on a lot more doors, and
we changed our packaging we kept the 24 box, but we went down to which we call a carton. And then the 6-packs.
Not like beer, 6-packs and cartons, you know. So we dumped the 12-pack and went with 60s and cartons, mate. And we brought out a couple of other sizes and went for a full rebrand on the cartons. And I think it's like anything. As you go, the longer you're on the market or the more people that do give you a chance, it's a bit of like the Jones effect. Look, no one wants to be first, you know, especially like in the hardware space where there's never been too much change in the decking space. No one wants to be first to give you a go, but once they know that, say, you had a hardware store as it was going all right, Pete might on board the product, and, you know, it starts getting a little bit of traction like that.
The theme of this podcast always seems to come back to word of mouth and marketing, and we've got marketing options galore, all these different channels and mediums to be able to get your product out there, but it still comes back to good old-fashioned value of trial and error, or pounding the pavement, you guys getting in the car and driving half the night, setting up a meeting.
Yeah.
These guys seeing you know, a couple of larrikins, Aussie blokes having a go and trying to get your product onto the marketplace. It seems to be really effective.
We definitely got it wrong, mate. We really spread ourselves real thin early days. We had a store in Newcastle give us a go. And before we had a second store in Australia, we flew to New Zealand to try and get a deal in New Zealand. And then we flew to Cairns to meet with a guy named Craig at Cairns Hardware, mate. And then we got a crack down in Hobart. So we'd been down there too before we onboarded. Well, on the way back from New Zealand, we got the Brisbane store. So our first sort of regions we were trying, instead of swirling out from Newcastle in a cost-effective way, any door that would open, we would just run through it. You know what I mean? So we had Newcastle, Cairns, Brisbane, New Zealand, Hobart before we had a store in Sydney. You know, we just didn't get it right, but we're just rolling blind. You know.
But it's probably, in hindsight, it's probably a good thing that you're able to get in with these regional areas or these regional hubs. People may be more willing to give it a go and give it a trial, and you were able to get that right and then get back into the mainstream where the high volume business was?
Yeah, it was funny. I mean, in the early days, like Steve said, bulldozed, but they'd give us a hint of interest. They had a pallet the next day.
Yeah, mate, we would have drove to Taree and done a 9 o'clock cross on a radio station to 3 listeners. Anyone that would listen to us or give us a turn, mate, we were there.
Yeah, I
which
love
is
it.
It's a tricky space innovation.
So back to, I guess, pivot point. You listened to feedback, did you? Like, what sort of feedback did you get from the market to be able to, I guess, pivot your product and change it and make it more versatile for the extra board widths and things?
I think, well, it's like, Aaron, if I come out with the best shoe in the world, but I've only got a size 10 and you're a size 12 and Pete's a size 13, you know what I mean? Like, so a lot of blokes that don't use those size boards would go and looks unreal, but I don't use that size board. So it was really, really frustrating because we had such a terrific, and it's an expensive product to build the tooling for, you know what I mean? It's not really, you can't just move, like you can't with the same tool move the moulding for the fixed and the removable spacer. So we had to go and buy and manufacture brand new tools for every single size. So it took us a little while to get a few dollars together, mate, to go and drop a couple of other sizes.
So I see you've got demonstrations on your website with trade expos. What's the process involved with that? Do you hire a booth, or how does that work?
Well, the first one we did was down in Hobart. Will Clennett said, come down with your product. I'll give you a really big space because they're expensive, those expos. And It's not just, it's also the time. So like, you think I'm running a business, Pete's running a couple of businesses, and then we have to step out for a few days, organise a team, fly them all to Hobart, you know what I mean, put them all up, cars, a combo.
Costs a lot of money.
And then we had to set out and buy all the decks, all the products to do our demo. But he did fortune us a fairly big space at the expo. Well, them booths are about $9,000 for a 2x3, you know, and he give us a big space. They call it the... what do they call it? Activation area. So he give us a really big space. We thought we're going to go down and make a go of this. So I said to Pete, if we're going to go, we'll make sure we get the content. So we're always really conscious to get as much content always of everything that we've done, because doing one thing in Hobart, if you can get the content, you can get the exponential value Australia and worldwide of whatever you showed or proved at said event, you know.
That's right, and just repeat the process.
Yeah, and then you can chop it up and punch the content through to show, because we're constantly trying to show them how good it was, but to be able to do a live, we did a race. So we set up 2 20-square-metre joist structures, and we had one team, our local team from down there called Deckheads Tasmania, on one side with 3 guys, and we set up actually Jakey O'Brien from O'Brien Building. He flew down with 2 of his blokes, so we had a 3-on-3, the New South Wales boys versus Tassie boys, and we used DeckTec, and they didn't, you know. And we laid 20 squares with 2 screws in every joist in about an hour 07. And the boys on the other side weren't even halfway finished, and they didn't have 2 screws in every board. So to have 2,000 tradies live on the cans, you know what I mean, watching you do that, live at a thing, it's fairly telling.
Oh, for sure. So who came up with that concept, having a deck out, if you want to call it?
Just a brainstorm. Like, how do you prove it? Like,
we had done video demonstrations before, but it was staged in a workshop.
Not so much staged from the timing or the value of it, but it was in our workshop. Do you know what I mean? So, and there was no live crowd there. So even when we pushed that content out early days, we had Brad and Lara that were from the block. They're up at Byron Bay now. And we had Keith at the time, who early days we had as a brand ambassador, come up, and we hired a workshop out at Cardiff, and we laid out a couple of identical joist structures and ran a race and videoed and got all the content, you know, locally. But then when you push that content out online, you get haters, you know what I mean? It's easy to sit back and hate new things, you know what I mean? So,
and then we had the opportunity to have this space, and we thought, put our balls on the line and let's do it live in front of these drunken tradies, you know. Yeah. You can't prove it any better than that.
Yeah, and like we knew, and like it was pretty sleepless the night before because we'd done it before and we knew that it was twice as fast, you know, but when they said, right, we're right to go, and they dropped, you know, it was all barricaded off, man. It was a big event. Like they had Hughesy, like the comedian there. They're big events, these big expos, you know, and we were sort of the second main event to the main stage, you know. And we knew, even though that it was twice, we knew the product would be twice as quick as laying decking boards traditionally. You still think to yourself, is it going to be twice as quick in front of 2,500 people live?
What if they do keep up with us?
Yeah, like what if these guys are like, really, really fast. And like, so our product, it takes just a little bit of, it's a really fast to set out, but it does take a little bit of time. And during that early interim stage, the guys from Deckheads Tasmania probably had pinned, I don't know, maybe two or three boards before we had laid out and laid out all the DeckTec. And then once they'd done that, our boys just went brrrr, and then started fixing off, and it was just like, sees later, you know?
How do you like those apples?
Yeah. So...
Yeah,
So
it is nervous though, wasn't it? Like Steve said, we knew.
Well, what if
knew,
if you don't if you are not twice as quick when you say, if that's been your cat's cry, and then it's not twice as quick live, then you're in a bit of trouble.
And to be fair, I mean, you're dealing with this whole new environment. You've got pressure. You've got, you know, an environment where there's people, plus the fanfare and all the action and activity going on around you. You know, there would have been a lot of pressure.
There was a lot of blokes that were a bit taken back, you know, a lot of old chippies, you know, particularly down around Hobart, you know, that were just going, wow,
This will never work.
That's crazy.
That's amazing. So what's it like looking back now, particularly with those moments?
Yeah, like Steve said, there's been ups and downs. The ups outweigh the downs for sure. That's what picks you back up.
You know, when you say looking back, I just feel like we're so early in the process still. It's like
still going.
In about 6 or 8 weeks, where, like Pete touched on, we're releasing our fourth size, which we get a lot of demand for, the 135 mil system. So that you know, that's probably the last piece in the mainstream sizes that we're going to do for a little while. Before we've got a few ideas for some other products, but we still haven't released that yet. And we sort of, so 28 deck in season 2018 is when we launched just with our 90 mil product, and we explained what we went through with that. And then last year was really good. We probably increased the business by about 1,400% from year 1 to year 2.
Wow.
And, mate, you know, our deck in season sort of is late August through to Christmas, and we're going to have a fourth size. So when you say looking back, I still feel like we haven't quite hit that tipping point yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the journey's continuing.
Yeah.
You mentioned Keith, which we all know from the block. How did that relationship come about? Was that more door knocking as well, or?
No, we just found his agent. We knew, like, he was the one on the block that would always pull everyone up for doing things wrong. So we thought if we could we needed to trade attention as, like, we were a new brand. So it wasn't like Makita brought DeckTec out. We were DeckTec. No one had heard of it, seen the brand. So we're a new brand in an existing space with a new innovation that's, you know what I mean, it does cost money to buy the product. You save it on your labour, but we knew that we needed, you know, another way to help us trade attention or get attention to the product and brand and a bit of cred, which went both ways with Keith, because some people think that he's a dickhead and other people respect him as being the foreman on big job sites, you know what I mean? But either way, you do get to trade attention. So
Keith's particular character over the years, he's certainly gone from that being portrayed as a bit of a wildcat, and now if you watch the show, he's a lot more respected. So in some ways, I think it's a perfect match for your product because it's followed a similar path, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been good. Like, to gain that attention, it has.
Yeah, and to answer your question, as we found his talent manager, and we had a little demo video we'd done up, and we bounced it through, and he liked it, and we agreed on terms, mate, and flew him up to Newey. And the first shoot we done was was the race that we done in the shed, but we grabbed a lot of content that day to knock up. Some of the content's still on our website now, like 16 Reasons Why, and a few different things are still on our website now. But we knew we needed the content to push out and show people the innovation, because otherwise, how do you show people, you know? So that's how we found him.
All right, guys. And what about accolades or recognition in the industry? Have you had any of those come your way yet?
Yeah, we have actually, mate. Yeah, so in 2018, we went in the HIA Innovative Products Award and got runner-up. And then last year we re-entered and, we won, mates. We won Innovative Product, HIA CSR Innovative Product of the Year.
That's incredible, because with that comes, I guess, true recognition from your peers in the construction industry.
For sure.
So that's really important to have behind you.
Yeah, it's an interesting night, mate. You see the biggest brands and biggest builders, and like the categories are like best house over $7 million. And then they show these incredible homes, and then they go now to the innovative product space. And it's like
but I love it. That's what it's about, isn't it? It's having a go. And so looking around, like on the wall, we've got winners never quit and quitters never win.
Yeah, mate, we've got affirmations all over the walls. They're based around patience and execute. I mean, ideas are 1%, not taking anything from Pete and his innovation, but, mate, ideas are 1%, mate. It's a long road. You got to be patient. And, Yeah, so they keep us up a bit, mate. We have a bit of fun. So
And the trust, is formidable, as I said. So the trust that you guys have for each other, and you're my second guest where we've had multiple guests on the show at once, and similar thing. It's the chemistry and the friendship and So
I don't think trust has never even been a question,
No,
has it?
no.
I can see both of you are great mates. So it goes back to, I guess, the organic friendship of you two, and you're not only great mates, but you look at each other, and when you're speaking to each other and you're picking each other's brain and looking for the other guy's approval. And so it's definitely a pair effort, and
100, definitely.
And you've clearly complemented each other with bringing this product online.
Yeah, and our separate skill sets too, as on top of that. Definitely not something you would do on your own. Oh.
Petey always said it was young bull, old bull, because I'm a million miles an hour. I work in dog years. I try and get 7 years worth of work done every year,
Yeah.
And Petey's a lot more calculated and sits back and has a bit of a look. But I was like, in the end, he said, I'm going to have to let the young bull run on this one.
I didn't have a choice.
And I particularly love how, and I actually really admire how you guys are just a couple of Aussie battlers having a go, and you've done all this work and effort by yourselves and been resourceful. And I mean, to be fair, most people you would think would have like a big marketing company behind them, or companies that specialise in distribution and bring things online. And to be able to go overseas, find that you've hit a brick wall there, and then come back to Australia and then do all these long trips and late nights and late night conversations, and then continually go and go and go, and then bring it online. I think it's truly remarkable.
Thanks.
Mate, we've both worn many hats in this project, for sure.
Yeah, circle back to New Zealand, as we actually got the deal over there. We've got a distributor. We're in about 50 or 60 stores in New Zealand now.
That's great.
And I think 100 and how many in Australia, Pete?
146.
Yeah, so over 200 stores now in the Asia Pacific region. We've got our IP in place in Canada, South America, Britain and North America. And, mate, we'd actually booked in to go to the National Hardware Show in Vegas in May this year. We'd organised everything, all our marketing, and we we're going to show that we'd already exported to another country. It's proof of concept. We're in a couple of hundred stores, which isn't that big for America, but we'd taken a stand in the innovation section of the NHS, because a lot of big box buyers and blokes going to look to license or look for distribution deals go to that space of this show from all around the world. So, we sort of COVID-19 stopped. We couldn't travel, so that's been put back till next year.
It'll be
that's a bit of a blow, wasn't it, Pete?
hot on the list for when everything gets relaxed.
Yeah, it was a real shame to hear that it was in Vegas. Yeah.
I think also just another observation, I can tell that this concept and your product and everything that stands behind DeckTec is not driven by financial reasons. It's clearly, it goes back to the roots of solving a problem and making life easier.
For sure.
And that's clearly evident just by sitting here talking to you guys.
Yeah, if it was about the dollars, we wouldn't have got this far.
For sure.
I think that's fair to say.
All right, so if people listening to this want to get into contact with you guys or buy your DeckTec product, hear more about it, see more about it, give it a try themselves, what's the best way to go about it?
A couple of ways, as you can visit DeckTec.com.au, that's DECKTEC.com.au, or follow us on our social handles, which is DeckTec TM for trademark, because someone had taken DeckTec.
Oh, really?
Yes.
All right, well, this has been a truly inspiring story. I'm fascinated by the effort, everything that's gone on behind the scenes to bring this product onto the marketplace. And as I said earlier, I'm really excited to have you guys as our first product on the show. So, yeah, look forward to seeing more products come online.
Thanks very much, mate. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode of Build Hatch. You got to hear DeckTec's journey from concept to creation, and I really enjoyed hearing about how these guys took advantage of any door that opened for them, and how they didn't just open that door, they ran right through it. I really loved that. As usual, feel free to follow us on our Instagram page or go to our website, and please rate our podcast. Have a great week, and you'll hear me again on the airwaves next week. Thanks for listening to another episode of Build Hatch.
You have experienced a Build Hatch developed production.